Good morning, this is Ricky, and welcome to Hope for Today. It is no secret that our country has literally been on fire with respect to all these conversations swirling around race and history and oneness and all of the conflict that is happening now when it seems like everyone is on different opposing sides. And I bet the average believer watching me today is perplexed by this, burdened by this, sick over this, and you're wondering, God, what do we need to do to get to the other side of where you want us to be with this conversation? That's my encouragement to you, that with respect to these hard to have conversations, that we need to raise the level of the conversation to do what Jesus would do and to say what Jesus would say and to approach things like Jesus would approach it. And what I learned from John chapter 4 is that Jesus refused to just jump on this side and argue from that set of thinking, or to jump on that side and to argue from that framework of thinking. Jesus found this middle passage to take the road less taken, and he gets in between both sides and he has the harder conversation, which is gospel moment and gospel grace to bring both sides together. Oh, if you could have said amen, you should have said amen right there. That's the calling for us believers in this moment. It is to find this gospel path between either sides and just say, hey, there's more between us that's common than what is different. And this is what Jesus has to say. John chapter 4, verse 4. I wish I had time to teach it like it's worthy of being taught, but the Bible says, verse 4, and he had to pass through Samaria. There it is, church. Jesus' path for reconciliation was to go through it, not just to go to it, but to go through it. Now, let me unpack what I'm trying to say here. Jews hated Samaritans. Samaritans hated Jews. And it had everything to do with race and culture. You see, literally, Samaritans used to be Jews who during captivity intermarried with pagan folks, thereby mixing races, starting a whole new race. As such, the Jews felt that they were better than Samaritans. Samaritans felt that they were better than the Jews. And as such, there's just tension on either side. And so Jews didn't mess with Samaria. Samaria didn't mess with Jews. So much so that Samaria was in the north part of the country, Jerusalem was in the south. Your conservative Jew, your typical Jew, your heartfelt Jew, on their way up to the north part of the country, they would literally, instead of going through Samaria, they would cross the River Jordan, take a circuitous route around the Sea of Galilee, extending their trip an extra 3 days. They would cross the Jordan River again just so they could say, I never even set my foot in Samaria. So now you can see John chapter 4, verse 4, because the Bible is saying he had to pass through Samaria. What was Jesus saying? I refuse to allow this whole saga of opposing sides, having all this tension. I refuse to let it go by on my watch. I'm going to go through Samaria. You know the story and what happens next. Jesus talks to a Samaritan woman at high noon in the middle of the day who was a prostitute. Ooh! Did you hear that? Like Jesus basically said, you know what? I'm going to show you a gospel path by having a willingness as a Jewish guy to have a conversation with a Samaritan woman, someone who's completely on the other side, someone who completely looks at it a different way, someone who didn't come up like I came up, someone who didn't have the experiences that I had. And I'm going to trust that God is going to meet me in my willingness to go through Samaria. That's it. That's how we get to racial reconciliation. That's how we get to a new day. That's how we get to greater understanding. It's not to sit on our side and talk through our sound bites and talk through our ways of looking at things, but to actually, you know what, buy a cup of coffee with somebody who doesn't look like you, live like you, or vote like you and say, can we talk? And who knows, maybe in that conversation, like Jesus and the woman at the well, you realize that you have way more in common than you thought you had. And who knows, maybe we can help our country one coffee at a time by going through Samaria. This is on my heart, it's on your heart, but that's the way to it, is to walk through it. Let God do a new thing in your life and in your relationships. Let's keep marching towards this oneness goal that Christ has for all of us. That's hope for today.